If you're over 60 and trying to keep your blood sugar under control, you may have heard something confusing. Fruit is healthy. But then someone else says fruit contains sugar, so avoid it. So which one is true? The answer is more interesting than either statement. Fruit doesn't automatically become unhealthy just because it contains natural sugar. But different fruits can affect blood glucose differently, and the portion, preparation, ripeness, and what you eat alongside the fruit can all matter. Today, we're going to look at 7 popular fruits and rank them from the ones that require the most caution to the ones that are generally easier to fit into a blood sugar-friendly eating pattern. And there's an important point before we begin. This isn't about declaring any fruit bad. It's about understanding how to eat fruit more intelligently. Because there's a huge difference between eating a small serving of whole berries and drinking a large glass of fruit juice. Let's start with one of the most popular summer fruits. Number 7, watermelon. Watermelon is almost synonymous with summer. It's sweet, refreshing, and contains a lot of water. But there's a reason people managing their blood glucose should pay attention to portions. Watermelon has a relatively high glycemic index, meaning the carbohydrates it contains can raise blood glucose fairly quickly compared with some other fruits. However, there's an important detail that often gets ignored. Watermelon is mostly water, so the amount of carbohydrate in a typical serving isn't enormous. That's why glycemic index alone doesn't tell the entire story. The bigger problem is portion size. A small bowl of watermelon is very different from sitting down with a huge plate and eating several cups without thinking about it. If you're watching your glucose, try keeping your serving moderate, and instead of
eating a large amount of watermelon by itself, consider having a smaller portion alongside a balanced meal containing protein, vegetables, or healthy fats. Most importantly, don't turn watermelon into an unlimited snack simply because it's mostly water. A reasonable portion can fit into many people's diets. The goal is portion awareness, not complete avoidance. Number 6, pineapple. Next comes pineapple. Pineapple contains vitamin C, manganese, and a group of enzymes known as bromelain. So why does it rank lower on our list? Because pineapple is naturally sweet and relatively easy to overeat. A cup of pineapple chunks contains a meaningful amount of carbohydrate and natural sugar. And ripe pineapple can be particularly easy to consume quickly because it's soft, juicy, and sweet. The important distinction is this. Bromelain doesn't magically cancel out the carbohydrates in pineapple. A food can contain beneficial nutrients and still affect blood glucose. That's true for practically every food. So if you enjoy pineapple, you don't necessarily need to remove it from your diet. Instead, control the serving. Choose a modest portion of whole pineapple rather than drinking pineapple juice, and consider eating it as part of a balanced meal instead of consuming a large bowl by itself. Whole fruit is generally a better choice than juice because the intact fruit retains its natural fiber and requires more chewing. Number 5, mango. Mango is another fruit that creates confusion. It's packed with flavor, and it also provides nutrients such as vitamin C, folate, and carotenoid compounds. But mango can be surprisingly easy to overeat. Why? Because one mango isn't necessarily a small serving. When you cut up an entire mango and eat it without paying attention to the amount, you're consuming a substantial quantity of carbohydrate. And mango can...
There's another problem. Mango tastes sweet enough that it's easy to keep eating even after you've had plenty. That doesn't mean mango is unhealthy. It means the serving matters. Instead of eating an entire mango at once, try a smaller portion. Pair it with a source of protein or healthy fat, such as plain Greek yogurt or a small serving of nuts if that fits your dietary needs. And remember, whole mango is very different from mango juice. Juicing concentrates the fruit and makes it much easier to consume a large amount of sugar quickly. If you love mango, keep the fruit. Just respect the portion. Number 4, grapes. Grapes might be one of the easiest fruits to accidentally overeat. Think about how you normally eat them. You wash a bunch, you put them in a bowl, you sit down. One grape becomes 5, 5 becomes 20, and suddenly you've eaten far more than you originally intended. The problem isn't that grapes are somehow poisonous to people with diabetes. They aren't. Grapes contain water, fiber, vitamins, minerals, and plant compounds.
The issue is that they're small, sweet, and extremely convenient to eat. That's why portion control becomes especially important. Instead of taking the entire bunch to the couch, put a measured serving into a bowl first. Then put the rest away. That simple habit can make a surprisingly large difference. And don't make the mistake of assuming that because something is natural, unlimited quantities are automatically harmless. Your body still has to process the carbohydrates. A modest portion of whole grapes can be part of a balanced diet. The key is avoiding mindless handful after handful. Number 3, banana. Now we reach one of the most misunderstood fruits, the banana. You may have heard that bananas are bad for diabetes, but the situation is more complicated. One important factor is
Ripeness. As bananas mature, their starches gradually change and become sweeter. A greener banana contains more resistant starch than a very ripe banana. Resistant starch behaves differently from rapidly digested carbohydrates and can also interact with the gut microbiome. But that doesn't mean you need to start eating completely green bananas. For many people, a banana can still be included in a blood sugar conscious diet. The practical trick is portion size and ripeness. Instead of eating an enormous banana, consider a smaller one. You can also slice part of a banana into plain yogurt, oatmeal, or another balanced meal, rather than eating a large banana by itself. And here's something important. Don't assume that every person with diabetes will respond to a banana in exactly the same way. Your glucose meter can tell you much more about your individual response than a generic internet ranking. If you're testing your blood sugar, you can compare your response to different fruits and portions. That's personalized information. Number 2, apple. Now we come to the apple. Apples are an excellent example of why whole fruit is different from fruit juice. An apple provides fiber, including soluble fiber such as pectin, and much of the fruit's beneficial structure is retained when you eat it whole. That means you're chewing the fruit, consuming the fiber, and taking longer to eat it than you would if you simply drank apple juice. The skin also contains fiber and various plant compounds. So, when appropriate and after washing the fruit thoroughly, eating an apple with the skin can be a useful choice. But once again, portion matters. A giant apple is not the same as a small one, and apple juice is not equivalent to eating an apple. Whole apple. When you drink juice, it's easy to consume the carbohydrate from several pieces of fruit without getting the same fullness from chewing and fiber. That's why whole fruit is generally preferable. If you want to make an apple snack more satisfying, pair a small apple with a protein or fat-containing food that fits your diet, such as unsweetened yogurt or a small portion of nuts. That combination may also help make the snack more filling. Number 1, blueberries. And now we reach blueberries. Blueberries are especially interesting because they provide fiber along with a variety of polyphenols, including anthocyanins. Anthocyanins are plant pigments responsible for the deep blue-purple color of berries. Research has investigated whether berry consumption may support cardiometabolic health, including insulin sensitivity and glucose regulation. Some clinical studies have reported promising effects, although the results shouldn't be interpreted as proof that blueberries can cure diabetes or replace medication. That's an important distinction. Blueberries are a food. They are not a diabetes treatment. But as part of a balanced diet, they can be a very useful fruit choice. They're also relatively easy to portion. You don't need a huge bowl. A modest serving can be added to plain Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, oatmeal, or eaten alongside another balanced meal. And frozen blueberries can be a convenient option. Freezing doesn't turn them into a completely different food. So if fresh berries are expensive or unavailable, frozen unsweetened blueberries can be practical. The key word is unsweetened. Watch out for products containing added sugar, syrups, or sweetened sauces. Plain berries are what we're talking about here. But there's a bigger lesson. At this point, you might be thinking, so should I stop eating watermelon, pineapple, mango, grapes, and bananas? Not necessarily. That would miss the most important lesson. Blood sugar Management isn't about creating a blacklist of foods. It's about understanding patterns. A small portion of whole fruit can behave very differently from a large serving of fruit juice, and your overall meal matters. Your activity level matters. Your medications matter. Your sleep matters. Your individual metabolism matters, and your response can be different from someone else's. That's why there's no universal fruit ranking that perfectly applies to every person. 4 fruit mistakes to avoid.
Let's go through 4 common mistakes. Mistake number 1, drinking fruit juice. This is probably the biggest one. Orange juice, apple juice, grape juice, pineapple juice. Even when a juice contains no added sugar, it can still contain a substantial amount of naturally occurring sugar. And because it's liquid, you can consume a large amount very quickly. One whole orange takes time to peel and chew. A glass of orange juice can be consumed in seconds. That difference matters. When possible, choose whole fruit instead. Mistake number 2, turning fruit into a sugary smoothie. Smoothies aren't automatically unhealthy, but what you put into them matters. A smoothie containing several bananas, mango, fruit juice, sweetened yogurt, and honey can become a very concentrated carbohydrate meal. Instead, keep the fruit portion moderate. Use unsweetened yogurt or another protein source. Add vegetables or seeds if appropriate, and avoid turning the smoothie into a giant liquid dessert. Mistake number 3, eating huge portions. Even healthy foods can become excessive when portions grow. One small apple, very different from eating 3 large apples. Half a cup of berries, different from finishing an enormous bowl. A small serving of mango, different from eating several cups. Portion awareness is one of the simplest strategies you can use. Mistake number 4, eating dried fruit without watching the quantity. Raisins, dates, dried mango, and other dried fruits can contain useful nutrients, but removing
Water concentrates the food. That means a small handful can contain much more carbohydrate than you might expect, and dried fruit is extremely easy to eat quickly. If you enjoy it, measure the portion instead of eating directly from the package. Also remember that sweetened dried fruit can contain added sugar. Check the ingredient list. A simple fruit strategy. So what should you actually do? Here's a much simpler approach. Morning. Consider a modest serving of berries with an unsweetened protein-rich food, such as plain Greek yogurt. Lunch. If you want fruit, choose a reasonable portion of whole fruit. An apple with the skin is one practical option. Afternoon. If you're hungry, don't automatically grab a huge bowl of grapes. Measure a serving first. Dinner. You don't have to ban fruit at night solely because it's nighttime. The important factors are your overall diet, portion size, glucose response, and individual health needs. If you notice certain foods consistently raise your glucose more than others, discuss those patterns with your healthcare professional. One simple rule to remember. If you remember only one thing from this entire video, remember this. Choose whole fruit, control the portion, and avoid drinking your fruit. That's more useful than memorizing a list of good and bad fruits. And if you're living with diabetes or prediabetes, don't make medication changes based on a YouTube video. If you're taking insulin or other glucose-lowering medication, dietary changes can affect your blood sugar, so discuss major changes with your healthcare professional. You can also use your glucose readings to understand your personal response. For example, if your healthcare team has advised you to monitor your blood glucose, you might notice that a small serving of berries affects you differently than a large serving of grapes. That information is valuable because your body is the final test. Final takeaway. Fruit doesn't need to be the enemy. The bigger problem is often how much you eat, how you prepare it, and whether you're consuming it as whole fruit or concentrated juice. If you're trying to support healthier blood sugar levels, berries, such as blueberries, can be an excellent option to consider. Apples are another practical whole fruit choice. Bananas, grapes, mangoes, pineapple, and watermelon can also fit into many diets when portions are appropriate. You don't need fear, you need information. You don't need to eliminate every sweet fruit. You need to understand your portions and your individual response. So the next time you reach for fruit, don't ask, is this fruit good or bad? Ask a better question. How much am I eating, and what is the best way to eat it? That small change in thinking can make healthy eating much easier to maintain. And remember, managing blood sugar is a long-term process. One meal doesn't determine your health. One piece of fruit doesn't determine your A1C. Your overall pattern matters most. Eat whole foods, watch portions, stay active according to your abilities. Follow your treatment plan, and work with your healthcare professional when you need personalized advice. Because the goal isn't to live in fear of food. The goal is to learn how to make food work better for you.